Shalom, shalom. This video is addressed to Highlander Machine Works 5795. So you wanted me to go into a little more depth of what it means to be out of the system. To be out of the system means that you can earn 100% of your income. It means that you do not have to report nor pay taxes. It means that you're willing to just live peaceably with those around you, at least by following common law or law of the land, which states that you shouldn't harm anyone, you shouldn't harm or steal their property, and you should honor and be transparent in contracts. Pretty much just those three rules right there cover common law and law of the land, which are rooted in the laws of Yahweh. And that's which I lead my house in. I lead my house in his commandments, following after Yahweh HaMashiach, which is Joshua the Anointed, in the English tongue. We know that we perish for lack of knowledge, and we chose to educate ourselves on what is actually going on and on the system and how it works. Now, you might not want to follow Yahweh, so I definitely recommend at least doing common law. Now, if you're a U.S. citizen or whatever your nationality is, there is some paperwork you can fill out to notify the appropriate authorities, the United States government, for instance, that you want to change your nationality, that you want to go through the proper process so you won't be required to pay taxes and report them and all of that. And there's an appropriate way to go through all this to make it a whole lot easier. You can, you'll basically be changing your status if that's what you choose to do after you're through watching this. You can, you'll have a new passport issued to you. You can fill out a revocation of election and or a Form 56, W8 Bin E, if you're wherever you're employed, or if you are the employer yourself, you can fill out a W8 Bin-E, and you won't even have to pay taxes on your employees. There are forms that exist and paperwork you can do to make this process a whole lot easier, to the point where if you actually wanted to, you could create your own nation. You could call it whatever you wanted. So it's a very neat thing. You can freely travel and sojourn. I personally, like I said, lead my house in the commandments of Yahweh, following after Yahweh HaMashiach, the Messiah. And because those who claim to abide in him ought to himself walk as he walked. And this is the love of Elohim, that we keep his commandments, and they are not a burden to those who love him. It is also written that it is not too hard or far from us to keep his commandments, which can be summed up in loving Yahweh, our Elohim, with all our heart, all our being, and all our might, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. On those two hang all the law and prophets, as quoted in Devarim 6 and Vayikra 19, which in modern day translations is going to be Deuteronomy 6 and Leviticus 19. Messiah was quoting from there. I do recommend looking in what over time has been either transliterated or changed, added to, or removed from Scripture, because we know we're not supposed to do that. If you, by chance, if somebody watching this video does read their Bible or read Scripture, study it, because words are important and they matter, names are important and they matter. And we want to allow the author to be the author. At least me and my house do. You all are free to serve whatever master you want. But to truly be free, even during the lockdowns, my family and I still traveled. We still went where we went. We still lawfully lived peaceably with everybody. Although we did get some, it's not for the faint of heart to do this. You will have some resistance. There will be people who don't understand. They're either ignorant to it or for whatever reason. But you should be respectable and peaceful as possible. The majority of things, even when it gets, you might have some fear and people might be hostile towards you, but typically the majority of the time there is a peaceful resolution. So you need to be prepared. You need to do your due diligence. You need to educate yourself to be able to stand, if and when necessary, as peaceably as possible. Because we still traveled, we still did what we did. We never muzzled up or did anything like that. You can look at some of my other videos. I was held into contempt, but nothing became of it. Because I just stood. I stood as peaceably as possible. I let them know I wasn't going to comply with silliness. I will comply with lawful things that make sense and that actually are necessary for life. But I will not comply with any silliness. and I'm free to make that choice. So basically, being out of the system means that you're free and that you don't have taskmasters reigning over you, forcing you to have licenses and all this other stuff. But you do want to be peaceable enough to fill out the appropriate paperwork and at least have the proper, having the ID, like the passport and such, makes it a lot easier for police officers, sheriffs, for people who aren't going to understand a lot of even their own statutory laws. Like I said, you're not going to be held accountable for the statutory laws. You're not required to follow them if you go through the proper process. But as long as you're doing common law, and especially if you're following the laws of Yahweh, of the Most High Yahweh, you're going to be okay. It doesn't matter where you're at on earth. It doesn't matter what person, what people, what culture you're around. It's rooted in love and being respectful to one another and treating your neighbor as yourself. So all will go over well. You just have to go through the proper process and putting those people on notice, letting them know who you are, that you just want to travel unhindered. You don't want to hinder anybody else. You don't want to hurt anybody. You want to be peaceable, which is what most people genuinely want to do anyway. We just fail to notice that our rights are slowly being stripped from us. And if we continue to submit to those things, we're not going to have any left. And we can see this common thing repeated all throughout history. So somewhere in this video, I'm not very skilled with all these apps, but I'll try to do overlays and backgrounds or however I need to work it, to put it in some things you can look into more, some codes, some UCC codes, USC codes, which it's statutory. You're not going to be bound by them, but it's easy to kind of guide anybody you're talking to as well as fill out the paperwork to put on notice whom you need to put on notice so you can do these things. And I will show you, I'll put somewhere in here my 5-star passport. It's essentially like a diplomatic status. I'm on a do not detain list. They know that I don't mean anybody harmed. I just can freely go about my business. I'm going to let people freely go about their business and everything's going to be okay. So, and that's done with, for instance, filling out a new DS-11 or filling out a passport renewal form and giving them an explanatory statement, which mine actually may be on here. I could put that in here as well. Actually, I'll do that. I'll put that in here. I'll put my passport and then some other things. And that way, if you get pulled over or ticketed, and you can also get a new dot number for your vehicles, you'll never have to renew your licenses, your plates, and all that. They'll be able to see it, and they can run it and see all the information when you're on the road. Now, if you can safely travel 190, 200 miles per hour on the road, you can do that and get away with it, but I don't recommend it. Be reasonable. Be reasonable and be safe, be lawful. Your goal is not to hurt anybody, not to hurt yourself, not to steal, not to harm anybody's property, and to honor and be transparent in what you say, because there are verbal contracts, and to honor especially any written contracts. And that's a lot of the ways we were tricked into these licenses and all this other stuff, because we contracted into the system. So basically, you're correcting your contracts. Anything you're contracted, covenanted into, or agreed to that you have now become aware of, you're just correcting all that and removing yourself out of it. And that's what I've led my family to do. I've recognized that I'm a Hebrew man of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that I want to follow Yahweh, and I want to keep his commandments, just like the Messiah did. And as I learn them, and as I go through them, I'm learning, I'm correcting whatever necessary in my life, because each and every one of us are responsible for our own belief. It's not whoever's in the pulpits. It's not anybody around. It's not what we hear. We are to vet and prove and test and try whatever we have to in order to make our own decisions in life and judge for ourselves what is true and what is not, what is righteous, what is unrighteous. And I lead my house to allow Yahweh to define that. He tells us what righteousness is, what sin is. He tells us what brings life, what brings death. He tells us what berachot are, or that's typically incorrectly translated as blessings, but you get the point, but berachot. And he tells us how we bring curses in our life. If we keep his commandments, we have berachot. If we fail to keep his commandments, we have curses in our life. Something as simple as, for instance, clean and unclean laws, like the dietary laws. You can test all the unclean foods. Even today, they're very highly toxic. The commandment, for instance, for don't wear a garment with wool and linen. Do a test on frequency and vibration and look what happens when you have wool and linen woven together. This is all scientific. It's so tangible. Belief is so tangible. But if it's not for you, at least follow common law and law of the land. And everybody can live peaceable like that. No one's going to want to hurt anybody. And we can all do appropriate business and be fair and kind and loving to one another and trade like that. That's basically all it is. That's how easy it is. I'm sure I ranted enough now, and may that make sense to you. I'll put however I do that. I'm recording now, obviously, and I'll just have to edit and put the things wherever I put them on here. So have an awesome day. Shalom, shalom. Thank you so much for your time. And may that help you. Any questions, anything I didn't make clear, just give me a comment, and I'll answer what I'm able to. And if I don't know, we can learn it together. Take care. Shalom, shalom.